we're going to start with one of our young song leaders, and so either they're running behind or they're not here. So if they happen to come in late, I guess we'll just stop and we will have a song, and then we'll go back into our studies. If you want to open your Bibles to Matthew chapter 13, that's where we're going to be. Matthew chapter 13, where you're studying the parables of Jesus. We are in this class studying the life of Christ, continuing through a long study that we've been doing verse by verse of the life of Christ, taking the four gospel accounts of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and putting those together and looking at them in parallel, in a chronological order. And so we've been doing this now for quite some time, and we're now up to the time of the parables, and we are in Matthew chapter 13. Let me advance this, Jesus' parables. Real quick, for some of you who might be joining us for the first time, this is what we're doing. You a lot of times have this in the back of your Bibles, this harmony of the gospel accounts. Some Bibles, some study Bibles will have that in the back where they take Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John and put them beside each other, and you can see where all these events line up in those four accounts. And that's what we're doing. We're just following through that, and as I mentioned, we are up to the time of the parables. And so let me just go ahead and advance up here a little bit. Okay, so we're at we talked about the purpose, well, a lot of different things that we've studied. So in Matthew chapter 13, we started on this parable the last time that we studied together. Let's go ahead and read it again, and then we'll continue from where we left off, which was at the explanation. So starting in Matthew chapter 13, verse 1. On the same day, Jesus went out of the house and sat by the sea, and a great multitude were gathered together to him, so that he got into a boat and sat, and the whole multitude stood on the shore. Then he spoke many things to them in parables, saying, Behold, a sower went out to sow. And as he sowed, some seed fell by the wayside, and the birds came and devoured them. Some fell on the stony places, where they did not have much earth, and they immediately sprang up because they had no depth of earth. But when the sun was up, and they were scorched, and because they had no root, they withered away. And some fell among the thorns, and the thorns sprang up and choked them. But others fell on good ground and yielded a crop, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. All right, so that's basically where we got to the last time that we studied, and we talked about how marvelous seed is, and that we're going to actually touch on that some more in the next parable. But the interesting thing about what we need to understand in this parable is who these people are. In other words, when he's giving these parables, remember that he's talking about spiritual, heavenly concepts, but he's using earthly objects to help the people understand. But obviously, not everybody understood. So here's Jesus. He's speaking to them in these parables, and we made this analogy. It's like talking to somebody from, let's say, Australia, or maybe England, especially Australia. If you've ever talked to an Australian, they will use the words that you may have heard before. You know that word, you've heard it, you understand it, but they use it in a completely different way than we do. For example, if they say they're going to just throw it in the boot of the car, and you're like, the boot of the car? What is you understand the word boot in the car, but what is that? And we say trunk. And so sometimes there'll be whole phrases that they'll be speaking, and you don't understand a word they're saying, even though you understand the words. That's what's happening in a parable. Everybody was understanding what Jesus was saying as far as the words he was using, but they did not necessarily understand the meaning behind it. And that's where we pick up in verse 10. Verse 10, the disciples came and said to him, Why do you speak to them in parables? Now, he's actually going to give the answer in verse 13, but first he says in verse 11, He answered and said to them, Because it is given to you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it has not been given. For whoever has, to him more will be given, and he will have abundance, but whoever does not have, even what he has will be taken away from him. Therefore, I speak to them in parables, here's the answer, because Seeing they do not see, and hearing they do not hear, nor do they understand. Now, in Bible talk, what he's saying is, I'm speaking to them for those who are seeking truth. Those who want to know the truth, they will find it, and they will understand it, and they will hear the message. But those who are not interested in truth, they will not understand what I'm saying, and it will not benefit them at all. Now, as we are about to, he's going to explain a little bit more of what this is. We'll see that, oh yes, that does encourage us. That does help us, those of us who are looking for truth. But remember, there's Pharisees and Sadducees and scribes that are there that are not interested at all in Jesus' teaching. They're more interested in catching him and doing something wrong so they can put him in jail or kill him or do something to him. And so that's what he means by those who hear will hear, those who don't hear are not going to hear it. So we continue in verse 14. And in them the prophet of Isaiah is fulfilled, which says, hearing you will hear and shall not understand, and seeing you will see and not perceive. For the heart of this people has grown dull. Their ears are hard of hearing, their eyes they have closed, that lest they should see with their eyes and hear with their ears, lest they should understand with their heart and turn so that I should heal them. But blessed are the eyes, for they see, and your ears, for they hear. For assuredly I say to you that many prophets and righteous men desired to see what you see and did not see it, and hear what you hear but did not hear it. Okay, so here's another reason. He gives a second reason why he's speaking to them in parables. Remember what the question was. The disciple said, why do you speak to them in parables? So the first reason is because those that want to know the truth will hear the truth. And you think about that in another phrase. How many times have maybe some of you parents said to your child, yes, you tell them something and they don't do it. And they said, well, I heard you. And I said, well, you may have heard me, but you may be listening to me, but you're not hearing me. All right, there's a difference in there. Son or daughter, I know you're listening, but I need you to hear what I'm saying. Do you understand? And then you grab a belt, Joey says. Hopefully it won't come to that, so that if they're listening. All right, so that's the first reason. The second reason he gives right here in verse 14 and forward, that's because it was prophesied. Remember, Jesus fulfilled prophecy. He fulfilled hundreds and hundreds of prophecy. And so therefore, he's saying, not only do I speak to them in parables so that those who want to know the truth will hear it, but also because that's what was prophesied. And the prophecy shows us a point in verse 15, for the heart of this people has grown dull. Now we do this also in our own society, in our own language. Okay, for example, if you have a certain belief, you're going to find news that lines up with the way you believe. That's just human nature. So whether you believe in X or you believe in Y, you're going to find news or you're going to find things and people that will agree with what you're thinking. You have ears for it, and you know what you agree with. It's kind of the same thing here, but if your heart has grown dull, the scribes and the Pharisees, they're not hearing what's being said. Like I said a minute ago, they just want him killed. And then the beautiful part of all this, I love verse 17, for surely I say to you that many prophets and righteous men desire to know what you know. They wanted to be here. Now, 1 Peter chapter 1, beginning in verse 10, Peter says the same thing. That it's been revealed unto you the mysteries of God. That prophets, even angels, wanted to know what it was God was doing. God had this plan, and they didn't understand it or know it. The prophets, and I've often wondered about that. Imagine a prophet receiving this inspiration to write down or speak the Word of God. For example, you think of Isaiah, whenever he talks about that a child will be born unto a virgin. Or Joel, who gives that great prophecy about the Spirit being poured out. Or Daniel, especially Daniel, that statue that he's going to set up a kingdom. Now, we see that because we have 2019 glasses looking backwards. And you know what's the saying? Hindsight's 20/20. Well, in this case, hindsight is the Old Testament. We can look back and we can put things together. Oh, this is what it was. Well, Daniel didn't know that. Can you imagine? I wonder how many nights, this is just the way my mind works, I wonder how many nights Daniel sat and thought about that and wondered, what is this kingdom that God's going to set up? Wonder what this is that he's doing. He didn't know who. He knew there was going to be a Messiah. He knew there was going to be a kingdom. He knew all this, but he didn't know when, where, how, what, or why. What does Galatians chapter 4, verse 4 tell us? Anybody know that verse? But in the fullness of time, God sent forth His Son, born of the law and born of a woman. And so when God decided, that's when it was going to be. Did you raise your hand, Jack?
I was just going to note it's even more strange than that. It says angels long to look into these things. Even the angels didn't understand or know the complete plan of God.
That's right.
It's
It is weird.
their spirit.
They're right there with God even. I agree. Okay, so we get into now, this is an important part. And next week I'm going to try to have a piece of paper that you can use for all the parables. I was thinking about that this morning. I wish I'd have had this thought earlier. But I want to try to give you a study guide that you can use when studying the parables. Because there are several things that you'll see over and over in the parables. And that is the elements of the parable. In other words, what's in the parable. And then you can get the lesson of it. What's the symbolism of those elements? And many other things. So let's think about this for just a second. What are the elements of the parable of the four soils? We read verses 3 through 9. What do we have? What are the parts of the story? You have seed. That's one of the most important things. You have seed. What was the other thing I heard? You have the sower. All right, so we have seed, we have a sower, and then what do we have? Soil. All right. Not only do we have soil, but what kind of soil do we have? 4 kinds of soil. And then you look at the different elements of those 4 soils. For example, the thorns, the stony ground, the fertile soil, and things like that. So those are the elements. Now remember, when we talked about this idea of spiritual concepts being explained through earthly objects, remember that picture I showed you that when Jesus was teaching, like in this case, standing in a boat looking back up at the crowd, that there would have been people there that when he said the stony ground, he could have pointed to the stony ground. Whenever he said the path, he could have pointed to it. People would be standing right there and see what he's talking about. Standing right there, his disciples were still going, the seed on the stony ground, the seed in the fertile ground. I see that, okay. And then you get to verse number 10. Why do you speak to them in parables? And then verse 18. Listen to Jesus. Therefore, hear the parable of the sower. Jesus is about to explain it. So even his disciples didn't fully understand, and this is such a great verse to show that there are some things in the Bible that you need help understanding. Not that you can't understand it, that you can't figure it out on your own. But sometimes it helps to have somebody explain things in different ways or show you in other parts of the Bible, because the Bible's its best commentary. Instead of listening to what some man says or some commentary that a man says, always go to the Bible first. And so here Jesus, who told the parable, explains it. When anyone, verse 19, when anyone hears the word of the kingdom and does not understand it, then the wicked one comes and snatches away what was sown in his heart. This is he who receives seed by the wayside. But he who received the seed on stony places, this is he who hears the word and immediately receives it with joy. Yet he who has no root in himself, but endures only for a while. For when tribulation or persecution arises because of the word, immediately he stumbles. Now he who receives seed among the thorns is he who hears the word, and the cares of this world and the deceitfulness of the riches choke the word, and he becomes unfruitful. But he who receives seed on the good ground is he who hears the word and understands it, who indeed bears fruit and produces some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. And so there Jesus, the master teacher, explains fully what he was talking about. Now, notice whenever you'll see a lot of times, let's see if I can find one here real quick. Yes, right here, if you will look at the very next verse, verse 24. And he says, the kingdom of heaven is like a man. Look in verse 33. The kingdom of heaven is like leaven. I even skipped over one, verse 31. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed. That's the point of a parable. He's not saying that this seed, this physical seed, is the word. He's not saying that. He's saying it's like that. Remember we used that explanation last time we talked about going into the jungle and finding a tribe of people who've not had any human contact for centuries. For centuries. And you go in and you're explaining what the outside world is like. And you're telling them about a telephone. Not only a telephone, which is a strange concept in and of itself to somebody like that, but imagine telling them about a smartphone. And you don't have one on you, and you're telling this Indian about a smartphone. How would you describe it? What would you do? You'd probably look around and go, oh, here we go, and pick up a shiny stone, right? And say, it's kind of like this. It's real shiny, and it's like this, about this size, and you put it up to your face, and you talk into it. And there's another shiny stone that receives the message. Meanwhile, they're going to be looking at you like, stones, messaging, shiny, what is he talking about? Folks, you need to understand that's exactly what Jesus is doing with these parables. When he says it is like a mustard seed, when it is like this, it's the same thing as saying, okay, how am I going to explain heaven? Well, it's like a shiny stone that you put up to your face. You understand? We don't know what heaven is truly like. We don't understand, even today, we don't understand all of the concepts and nuances of the kingdom of God. Okay, there's more to it. Even though we have more than don't forget, he's introducing the kingdom. It's going to make more sense, especially whenever the Holy Spirit falls upon the apostles. But at this point, they don't have a clue what he's talking about. Now, what is their concept of the kingdom? Earthly. What does that mean? They wanted it by hand. They wanted an actual territory, kingdom like what King David had. In the time of King David and King Solomon, we were rulers of the roost, right? That's what we want to go back to. We want another King David. That's what they had in their mind. But that's not what Jesus came to do. He says, you're not thinking right. So how can I explain this? The kingdom of heaven is like a man sowing seed. Okay, so he's talking about where's the territory? Where is the territory of the kingdom? Say again? Part of it is above. That's exactly right. And it also starts somewhere else. But it starts. Think about this parable. Where does it start? In the heart of man. See? This is what I was talking about with that paper that I want to get for you for next week, where you can start putting these things together. So we talked about those elements of the parable. We said the seed. All right? That's one of the things that he's used. So, according to Jesus' explanation, what is the seed? There you go, the Word of God. This right here is the seed. Now, you think about it, what else is this called? This has other names. It's called seed, sword, okay? It's got different names that it's used, that is used to describe it. All right, so then he says, not only we know what the seed is, so who's the sower? Did you pick up on that? He doesn't exactly say, but you should be able to pick up on it. Who's the sower? Not God. Us. Jesus would be one of the sowers, but he's talking about us. What does he mean by that? Us sowing seed. Let's see here. So if I want to be a Christian, I need to go get me a bag of seed and just start throwing it. Is that what he's talking about? What is he talking about? It starts with P and ends with reaching, preaching, right? We need to be preaching the gospel, preaching the word. Now,
Have right knowledge.
that's right, have right knowledge. Preach all day. Preach when they want to hear it. Preach when they don't want to hear it.
If it's wrong, then it's wrong, and what you're doing is bad, it's not
You just keep preaching. That's right.
preaching with or with.
So now you got 4 different types of soil. So we know that soil is the heart. And you got 4 different types of soil. What did he say? He said the stony ground was what? Go look back what he says there. What's the stony ground? Where the seed doesn't sprout, doesn't have any roots, and it dries and it withers, right? So how does that apply to actual life?
Well, it's like what you're passionate about. If you're not fully invested into something, then you only kind of go in it with for lack of better words, a half-a attempt, then it's not going to be fruitful.
Okay? And so if you are passionate about it, but you don't have a full commitment to it, then it's kind of like you have no roots in it. All right? Very well said. So there's that type of heart. Then what does he call the thorns? According to this, what does he say what does thorns represent? You got the seed and the thorns. Cares of the world. Does somebody have their hand raised over here? What are the cares of the world? What are cares of the world that would choke out the word? Money. That's definitely one, that's for sure. What else? It's okay. What? Lust of the flesh, the pride of life, exactly. There's lots of things that can choke it out, all right? You think about, for example, if you like to play golf, all right? And it's a beautiful Sunday morning, all right? It's been raining, it's been cold, it's been terrible, but now Sunday morning rolls around and it is beautiful. And you haven't had the chance to play golf. You've heard that joke, right, about the preacher that went out. He skipped church, he called in, and he went out and played golf that Sunday morning, and he hit a hole-in-one. Right, first tee, a 500-yard drive, whack, goes all the way down, boom, 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 right in the cup. He's looking around, wow, this is man, this is great. And God's voice says, yeah, but who are you going to tell? Because he skipped church. He shouldn't be there, right? So that can be a thorn of the flesh. Whatever you put before God can be a thorn of the flesh. Or I say thorn of the flesh can be a thorn. Say again. Anything can interfere. Doesn't have to be a specific object. It can be a feeling or a sentiment. It could be family. It could be anything that you put before God. And that can choke out. That's what he's talking about. Look at it again. He says that it chokes it out. Let me go back to the verse here. So he says that the seed among thorns is he hears the word, and the cares of this world and the deceitfulness of riches choke the word, and he becomes unfruitful. That goes back to what you were saying a minute ago with the pride of life. 1 John 2, verse 16, it says, don't focus on the things of this world. Focus on those things above. All right, then he gets into those who receive seed on the good ground are those who hear and understand, who indeed bear fruit. All right, so now here's another word that he's using, bearing fruit. What's he talking about? Bearing fruit. Again, he's using these terms, these agricultural terms, seed, soil, growth, fruit. That's all agriculture.
Finding other people to be Christians.
Say again.
Finding other people to be Christians.
One way of bearing fruit, Joey, is exactly that, finding other people to be Christians. That means you're now sowing, okay? What else is bearing fruit? What does he mean by bearing fruit? Producing. The evidence of your belief, your conversion. That's huge. That is huge. Because if you decide to follow Jesus, you can't keep going the way you were going. You need to follow Jesus and do things by his way, which means that that's what you're going to be doing by bearing fruit. You're showing the world, I'm not going that way anymore. I was living in sin. I was focusing on the world. Now I'm following Jesus, and everybody can see that. Whatever Jesus did, that's what you do. Wherever he goes, that's where you go. That's part of bearing fruit. It's producing, it's showing the evidence of your faith. Any questions, comments so far? Okay. So, trying to see if I left anything out. Okay, so here's some of the spiritual applications that we get out of this. He explains it. We explain what a parable is, and that we need to be careful not putting things into the Bible that are not there. Jesus very clearly explains what the parable is, and we should not go beyond that. There are these terms that we like to use, or preachers like to use, called eisegesis and exegesis. Have you ever heard those terms? Okay, what it means, you think of exegesis. We have the word Exodus in the Bible. What's Exodus? God led the people out of Egypt. That's what Exodus means. Well, exegesis means you take the Bible and you lead out the meaning. You let the Bible speak to you. You read it, you accept it, and it speaks to you. And that's exactly what the parable is all about. It goes into the heart, you understand it, you accept it. Eisegesis is the word that means into. Ex means out, eis means in. And so in this case, people get their ideas, they think, you know what? This is what I believe. Let me go find a verse that supports that. You know, what did Jesus say? He said, or the Bible says that Judas hung himself, right? We know that. And so I think you need to go hang yourself. In fact, here's a verse that says, Jesus says, go do likewise. See, taken completely out of context, reading something into it that's not there. And I know we're making jokes about that, but people do that, and that's where false doctrines come from. So we have to be really careful not reading into the Bible, let the Bible speak to us. And that's important whenever we look at parables, because sometimes people want to add a lot of things to it that's not there or the Bible doesn't support. So when we talk about spiritual lessons that you see right here in the parable of the soils is that all teaching has a goal. When that sower went out there, did he go out there just he did go kind of nonchalantly, but did he go out there with no goal? It's like, yeah, I'll just throw this seed around and come what may. That was not his attitude, was it? He had a purpose. What is his purpose? What is his goal? What does he want from that seed? What's that? He wants the good ground, but what does he want from that good ground, from that seed? If you throw, Converts. He wants a crop. I don't know a single farmer that goes and buys seed and then just, whatever, just throws it whatever and does whatever with it. No, they put it in they want to find that good fertile ground that they can put that seed in that they will get a crop out of. Now, is there going to be some waste? Is there going to be some that doesn't do what it's going to do? That's the purpose of the parable. Yes, some's going to fall on the wayside, some's going to fall on the thorny ground, some of it's going to fall on the stony ground. But there is that good crop. That's what you need to focus on. So, teaching has goals. Not everybody's going to believe, and that's the second part of it. There are different kinds of soils, and we need to understand that not everybody's going to believe. Boy, you want to learn this, go into the mission field and start working and teaching and preaching and see. I can, in my head right now, I can see all four soils very clearly. I know that there are members right now in Paraguay that are there. I know they're there this morning because they are the good soil and their hearts are taking in their understanding. But I also know some that are struggling still to this time. I still get texts and things like that from them, so I know what's happening in the church there in Paraguay. I know some are withering away. And then I know some that didn't even really, even though we baptized them, we taught them the truth, it didn't stick at all, and they're gone. Yes. Have you seen that in Margaret Street? And talk to any of the elders, and their hearts grieve over this. And so, yes, there is that soil represents people, and we can see that. Now, the other thing it teaches us is that we should, yes, Bob.
I just was wondering, what is the 100-fold, 60-fold, 30-fold?
What the production that they'll do? All right. So you have good soil. All right. Let's look. It's talking about the good soil. Some produce 30, some 60, some 100 of the good soil. So that good soil are those who took the word, we understand that from the parable, and they were converted. All right? I've been converted. You've been converted. You've been converted. You've been converted. Does everybody in this room do the same job in the kingdom? Or do the same thing in the kingdom? We all do what we can. All right? But some of us only produce, 30% because we have a very specific job and we can't give that much time to the kingdom. There's nothing wrong with that. Doesn't mean you're any less faithful. Am I right?
So there's an allowance there for talent or effectiveness or...
That's right. That's exactly right. And then now you think about this from an agricultural aspect. Are there places, are there areas where you can have a field that produce more, let's just use corn, that produce more corn than other places? Absolutely. Absolutely. And so it's the same thing. We have people in the church, an elder, for example. Would you say an elder is yielding a huge crop? I mean, look at the service that they're giving to the Lord. And so that would be, and not saying that you don't have to be an elder to give 100-fold to the kingdom, okay? Somebody who's not a deacon, elder, preacher, or nothing can still give 100-fold to the kingdom. It all depends on how much they're able to give. Does that answer your question? It's a good question.
That's why I bring, teach, and keep.
There you go.
People that can bring, some can't. You have people that are better teachers than others. But everybody has a place.
What a great example. So you have bring, teach, and keep, okay? If you have somebody who's excellent at bringing, they're bringing and bringing and bringing. Are they giving a big crop? Absolutely. But then you have teachers who can teach, and they're teaching everybody, and they're doing a good job, and they're giving an excellent crop. Or the keepers. They're all three doing different things, but they're all giving, they can give 100%. And then some, like I said, are not able to. Maybe they're not spiritually mature enough yet to, or they're still growing. You think of our new brother, Javante. Okay, Javante's brand new in the faith, right? Is he giving 100%? He doesn't even know yet. He's still learning. He's trying to build his faith up, all right? So that's part of it. A new babe in Christ has to grow. Yes? Well, that's a great point, JC. In fact, you can also add things like some people want to call the story, the account of Lazarus and the rich man and going into Hades. Some people say that's a parable. Some people say it's not a parable. And I would say the same thing with what you're doing with I go to prepare a place where there's many rooms, many mansions sometimes the way it's, that can be a parable. It all comes back to let me explain this, a phone. Here's a shiny rock. How do I explain this to you? And he has to use earthly objects to help us understand heavenly concepts. So I think sounds like you're reasoning very well there. Okay, another point that we get. Yes, Lori?
And I know this is probably too in-depth to discuss now.
No, nothing's too in-depth. That's what this class is all about.
But I've heard sermons on different levels of rewards
Uh-huh.
and also different levels of accountability.
Yeah, oh, good point. And that's exactly right. I mean, you think about, here's the thing. We don't know exactly what that is, but the Bible does give indication of that. For example, an elder's held to a higher degree of responsibility than everybody else. Well, that would indicate that there's more expected of him. And it talks about those of a double portion. Well, what is he talking about? A double portion of what? A double extra portion of heaven? What is that? Same way with condemnation. And so the Bible mentions kind of levels of reward and everything. I don't think you can take it as far as some people do, and they want to say multiple heavens. There's one heaven, there's one hell, okay? And everybody's going to be there, but perhaps one way of describing or thinking about it is how much You think an elder is going to enjoy heaven a little bit more than somebody who's never served as an elder? Boy, when they get to heaven, they're like, oh, I made it, and thank you, Lord, and all that they went through. All right, that's just my way of thinking of it. So here's the bottom line. We don't know exactly what that means. Yes, Jack?
Just interject that, however, personally, I believe that is true. The writings of the Lord, I believe that. But I also believe it's something you shouldn't spend very much time on. About as much time as the mother of John, when she asked Jesus about the kingdom situation, Jesus basically said, that isn't your business.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't our business as to what exactly is going to happen, but it does talk about reward. Could I go back to the parable?
Let me add something you said real quick. In fact, Jesus says that to his disciples in Acts. He says, there are things you don't need to know or things that doesn't concern you. So anyway, go.
In fact, the question earlier about I'm preparing many rooms, places in heaven. He basically, when you look at that conversation, context is vital. He's basically just cluing them in. Hey, there's going to be a place for you. That's all you need to know.
That's all you need to know.
And
Yeah.
it's me.
Can't wait to get there and find out.
Back to the parable, though.
Yes.
The parable of the soils. I remember, you can look at it two ways. You always say, well, what kind of soil am I? What kind of soil am I?
Ah.
That's a question, but that isn't. I think the parable is about the sower.
Yes.
And in my experience as a Christian trying to sow the gospel, a problem that some of us, like me, read sometimes is we try to figure out what kind of soil that is beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
And that is an error. The sower has a responsibility to sow. And I have farmed. And by the way, farmers are discriminate about where they go to seed. So this is not about that. He's saying, so that's where you go too deep in the parable.
Mm-hmm.
And what he's saying is, sow the seed.
That's right.
Sow the seed. You don't know what kind of soil it is.
That's right.
I kind of quit sowing to wealthier people. At one point in my life, I decided it was a waste of time. It was a waste of time for good. Well,
You became a soil inspector.
yeah, it is. Because I was the sower. Now, over time, you figure out, in other places, you don't, what do you throw to a pig or a dog? You find out it's a pig or a dog, and you don't spend time. But for the sower, we should not discriminate in sowing the gospel.
Amen.
I'm asking.
No, absolutely. In fact,
That's the principle maybe of it. And don't be dejected, though, when you sow that seed.
that's right.
Have you ever studied with somebody and they just absolutely turned everything down and you were crushed by it? If you haven't done that, that's fine, but I have. And I've done such a marvelous job with the gospel, and he's not, what's wrong? You get dejected.
Here's the answer.
He said, there are different kinds of soils, Jack.
That's right.
So it's about sowing. Let's sow. Let's
Amen.
not discriminate.
That's actually,
You're poor. It doesn't matter. Let's don't discriminate. Let's don't try to determine what soil it is.
that's right. Don't be a soil inspector. That's actually the very next point is don't be a stingy teacher or a stingy sower. And I'm going to take what you were saying one step further. So 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 6 is key to all of these agricultural references to seed. It says, I planted, this is Paul talking, I planted, Apollos watered, God gives the increase. Now, we're going to see that in the next parable that we get into about the growth of the seed, and we don't have time to get into it today, but Jack's exactly right. We can't be stingy sowers, stingy teachers. We can't decide. We can't be soil inspectors before we go out there. There are such a thing as soil inspectors, people that go out and look at the pH level and all kinds of things, the acidity and everything that's in soil before they'll do anything with it. That's not what there's not one thing in the parable that says anything about that. Not only that, but the sower, was it his job to worry about the hard ground, the stony ground, or the thorny ground? No, his job was to sow. So that's exactly right. Now, I had this happen to me in a couple of different ways in Paraguay. I remember whenever Jack Laughlin and some others came down to Paraguay, and we went. When you got a bunch of people that don't speak Spanish, it's kind of hard to evangelize. And so what do you do with all these people? Well, you can pass out flyers. So we went to the bus station, and we're passing out flyers that were in Spanish. And so they didn't have to even speak Spanish. Just give a flyer to somebody as they're coming in, they're going, they're getting off the bus. And so I was at this one door as people were coming in, and I would hand out a flyer. And there might be a person go by or two, and I wouldn't say or do anything. And then another person come in, and I'd hand them a flyer. And after that happened a few times, Jack Laughlin walked over to me, and he says, "Troy, how come you're giving a flyer to some people and not to other people?" And it hit me. It's like, I'm being a soil inspector. You know, I don't know who's going to take this or not. I just need to give the flyer out and quit worrying about who I think will take it and won't take it. Because here's the other thing I learned in Paraguay. Exactly what you said. I would study with somebody, and I think, boy, this person's going to be baptized anytime. They're going to become a member of the Lord's church, and they wouldn't. They would not. But yet, from somewhere out of the blue, and this happens all the time. It's happened here. It's happened in all the time I've been in ministry. As I'm studying, focusing on this person, God sends somebody from over here. Or somebody from over here, or perhaps even a family member or something that says, "Troy, I've got a question." That's who winds up being baptized. That's the one who winds up producing 100-fold. And this person right here is the stony ground. And I'm focusing on that. So we just need to be teachers, not worry about it. If it doesn't turn out, those people who looked me in the eye and said, "Troy, I know I need to be baptized. I know I need to be a member of the Lord's church to be saved, but I just can't do it because my family would disown me. I just can't do it because I can't give up the Virgin Mary. I just can't do it because," and I can tell you about 10 other reasons that they gave me. All I can say is, you received the word. I'm the sower. I did my job. And that's what God wants of me. And yes, you do feel rejected. But it's not, who are they rejecting? They're not rejecting you. You know, I'm trying to remember his name, the guy who came here from Bring, Teach, Keep. That's the first time I'd ever heard a lesson on that. When he says that if somebody says no, you should rejoice. Because God said that was going to happen, and it means that you did your job. And just keep on moving. A no is actually an affirmation of you doing your job. If somebody says no, it's an affirmation. Am I saying that right? An affirmation or confirmation of you doing your job. It means, hey, I sowed the seed. Okay, it fell on some stony ground, but I sowed it. Make sense?
Well, in First Corinthians again, you read that if you're going down to 8, it kind of goes to what Laura was talking about or asking. Now, that neither plant and neither water but one, and every man shall receive his own reward according to his own.
That goes back to the 30-fold, 50-fold, 100-fold. Each one's going to receive the reward according to their own labor. That's exactly right. When you preach, you use a scatter gun. Just spraying it out there, right? Did you have something to say? If they say maybe, that could turn into, well, if they say maybe, that's an open door. I love maybe. It's better than no. Maybe is very good. Listen, here's something too. In the world we live in today, it's sowing, all right? We do take rejection very seriously. We don't like to be rejected. But you can sow in so many ways. You know, Facebook's a good way to sow the seed. You don't have to, you just put something on there. You never know what kind of an effect you're going to have on somebody. The way you live your life is sowing seed. If people see in you Jesus Christ, you're sowing seed. Of course, one of the best ways is to get to know somebody. You know, you see the same cashier at Winn-Dixie every time you go in there. You even know her name, she knows your name. You can sow the seed by talking to her about that. Or pick somebody, anybody, your own family members, is sowing that seed. And a lot of times it's done in love and compassion but you're not a soil inspector. You just sow the seed. Well, the bell is rang, and I thank you so much for your attention. Next week, we will continue with the next parable, which is in Mark chapter 4. We're now going to take some time and prepare for our worship service. So thank you again for your attention.